And for the artist, I mean, until you see a 5 by 10 foot press or a 4 by 8 foot etching bath, you don't really get it. Like, oh, I could really work that big.
Hello, print friends, and welcome. This is a bilingual podcast, so if you subscribe to us, you'll be getting episodes in English with me, as well as in Spanish with Reynaldo Gil Zambrano. Together, we speak to people around the globe about their practice and passions in the field of print media and multiples. This episode of Hello Print Friend is brought to you by Speedball Art Products. Speedball is thrilled to announce that they are extending their range of beloved oil-based block printing ink. Partnering with Hello Print Friend host, Reynaldo Gil Zambrano. To give this line a fresh new look, they have launched 10 rich color options in convenient 8-ounce size cans. The ink is formatted to be permanent, waterproof, and archival, but provides easy cleanup with vegetable oil. Available now to purchase through Speedball's website. This episode is also brought to you by Legion Paper. Legion Paper is a fine art paper company that represents the best papers in the world. They either stock it, source it, or make it with brands like Stonehenge, Somerset, Coventry, Reeves, Arches, and more. Legion is the best paper resource for every artist and printmaker's needs. Learn more about the variety of papers Legion stocks at www.legionpaper.com. Print friends, did you know that Florence, Italy is home to Srisa, a leading institution for art and design education? It offers highly personalized instructions and experiential learning meeting American university standards for study abroad programs in fine art, liberal arts, and design. Educators interested in teaching at Srisa can lead a faculty-led program utilizing its top-notch printmaking facilities in one of the world's most inspiring cities. To learn more, email at info@srisa.org. That's SRISA.org. And don't forget to mention that Hello Print Friend Podcast sent you for exclusive discounts and perks. My guests this week are Lisa Bulawsky and Tom Reed from Island Press in St. Louis. We talk about the history of this iconic publishing institution, the ambitious projects they take on, and the importance of having the freedom to take bold artistic chances. Hi, Lisa. Hi, Tom. How's it going?
Hey, Miranda.
Hey, Miranda.
Good.
Yeah,
Good.
doing great.
Very nice to see you both again. It was really fun to connect with you in Miami last year and just learn more about what you're doing. And I was delighted that you are letting me borrow a little bit of your time to learn more about Island Press and to learn more about what you both do there. So thank you again.
Yeah, thank you. It's great to be here.
Would you kick us off by introducing yourself and letting people know individually how you define who you are, where you are, what you do?
I'm Lisa Bulawsky, and I am an artist and printmaker. I've been teaching at Washington University in St. Louis since 1996. So I'm a professor of art, and I've been director of Island Press since 2011. And I'm currently the outgoing chair of the MFA in Visual Art program here.
I'm Tom Reed. I came to Island Press via Chicago. I worked there as a printer for both Tony Fitzpatrick and then for Landfall Press before coming to St. Louis. I've been in St. Louis at Washington University since 2000, I think it is. And I've been the printer at Island Press since, I believe, was it 2003? I think that's when I stepped in and took over for Marianne Simmons as she was stepping down. I head up the printmaking department here. I'm the area coordinator. I teach in printmaking, and I'm also the lead collaborative printer / master printer for Island Press.
Wonderful. And could you maybe both to tell us a little bit about how you came to printmaking to begin with? We heard a little bit about how you both came to Island Press and to Washington University, but what about first time stepping in a print shop?
Oh, what a great question. Yeah, I was just thinking about this because I think Tom and I both come from sort of storied printmaking history backgrounds. I went to UC Santa Cruz, which doesn't, necessarily have a, huge tradition of or history of printmaking, but I was trained by a Tamarind master printer, Paul Rangel, who really got me fired up about lithography. So stone lithography was my first love. But I also worked with Kay Metz, who had been at Atelier 17 in New York with Stanley Hayter, and Zarina Hashmi, who I learned relief and intaglio from. So I started from that background in the 80s in California, and then got my MFA in printmaking at the University of Kansas, where I did a lot of mixed media work actually, and incorporated my print work with other ways of working, sculpture and works on paper. But yeah, I came to Washington University to teach printmaking and drawing in the 90s, and was always involved with Island Press from the time I started teaching here.
Lovely. Yeah.
I think my first experience where I really thought that printmaking was like had something special was when I did most of my undergrad at Coe College in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and studied with Lucy Goodson there, who was just a ball of energy and was really charismatic about making prints and getting the rest of us excited about prints. And so I found myself spending a lot of time there, just working in the studio late at night by myself. Discovering etching is what I first fell in love with. And then I transferred to the University of Iowa and finished my last year there, thinking that would be a good way to get to know the faculty at Iowa and angle myself for graduate school. I went to grad school at Iowa, did my MFA there. I studied with Keith Ockapole mostly. During that time, I had the good fortune to work with Virginia Myers and be her TA and learn a lot of great etching stuff from her. But I did mostly work with Keith. Rest in peace, Keith Ockapole. Yeah, and was there until would have been in my third year, had Tony Fitzpatrick. No, it was the end of my second year. Tony Fitzpatrick came to Iowa as a visiting artist. And I had the opportunity to go work with him in Chicago, and that led me on the trajectory where I am now. But I really think that Lucy Goodson and Keith Ockapole were the people who really made me love making prints. And just the atmosphere in the shop at Iowa really was just fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good lead into my next on background kind of question, which is what was it about printmaking for the both of you? Do you think that attracted you to it and then made you stay, made you think this is something I could weave into my life?
Yeah, well, going back to being an undergrad and the difference between, like, this is very sort of immature, but I would go to painting class and I would have to paint from the model or the still life, and I would go to printmaking and I could draw and do whatever I wanted. So that was a big
Oh,
part of it.
yeah.
But, Paul Rangel that I mentioned before really instilled a lot of the sort of philosophy of printmaking, the democratic ideals of it, the kind of accessibility of imagery and popular culture. Those things were really important and still are really critical to the way I think about printmaking, the way I teach it. It's and also the way that think about it, as the director of Island Press. Just this sort of idea of how powerful and how much potential there is in the matrix for creating multiples, but also for variation within that and modification. And so there's that magic, like I mentioned before, stone lithography. For me, that was like alchemy. There was something that
Yeah.
I couldn't quite grasp about what was happening, but it worked and I loved it. And then there was the labor of it, the repetition, the sort of manual labor of preparing a plate or a stone, and that those gaps in the creative process where you're doing something that's more meditative or even, kind of tedious, but allows your mind to do something different than when you're actually creating an image or a piece. So, yeah, I could go on and on about.
Yeah, I love it. It's all beautiful.
Now, I would agree with almost everything that Lisa just said. A lot of those same things were really important to me as well. There was something about drawing and what it did to the drawing once it was made into that matrix, and then the impression that it left on the paper. It was my drawing, but it was my drawing on steroids or something. It had this extra oomph behind it. It had topography. It had the magic of going through the press and the release onto the paper. It had all those things in there, the labor, all of that. And I always felt like I always had just a little bit more than my drawings had. That is what initially got me. But I think that the community is what I really fell in love with.
Yeah.
And you just get really used to not making artwork in a vacuum. There's people around to respond to what you're doing, to be excited about what you're doing, and you get just as excited about what they're doing. And that's something I've always really loved being around. I think in regard to what I'm doing now, that if you would have asked anybody that I went to school with if they thought that I would be the one who would be the printer for life, they would have said, there's no way.
Really?
I was such a hot mess. And I remember Kent, what was Kent's last name? But he was a year ahead of me, or maybe 2 years ahead of me at Iowa, and he was the litho TA. I came in one night and squirted ink out in the monoprinting blankets and then just flipped them over and put them together and cleaned up and left it. And the next day he came in and he was like, yeah, I'd like to talk to you about something. So I was that person in the shop. But once I worked with, it was really with Jack Lemmon, a little bit with Tony, but really working with Jack Lemmon at Landfall, where he just threw you into the deep end. It was like my first project was getting to work with, my first project alone was getting to work with Saul LeWitt, and I was scared to death doing it. But there was something about that sink or swim thing that gave me a lot of confidence, and I feel it propelled me to where I am now. And I like to do the same thing, and I think Lisa does too. When we have the students come and work in the shop, we don't care so much what your skill set is. It's like we want to throw everybody in the water and see if they swim and let them enjoy the community and the collaboration and all of that.
Yeah. Oh, those were great answers. We'll find out if this is like a little bit tangential, but something that was occurring to me when I was listening to you talk about that kind of sink or swim thing. I work at a university. I don't work as an instructor, but I interact with students. I interact with a lot of the faculty who are doing things like teaching expanded media and print media. And one of the things that I've heard as a theme is the students culturally, when they're coming in now, are really averse to failure, to not being perfect at things. And just curious, because if the students these days, the kids these days, how they respond to that technique of just go on in and make a bunch of mistakes until you get better, because you're just going to have to keep swimming forward.
I recognized that a few years ago, that tendency, especially in the students here. I mean, maybe it's everywhere, like you're saying, like it's a cultural trend, but I started teaching a class called Feedback Loop that was just about kind of taking those chances and actually purposely failing. Like those assignments were sort of based around purposely failing, making the worst print you can make, just as a goal, so that to get over that need for it to be, perfect. But, in the context of the collaborative shop, Tom is just really great at helping people feel at ease and jumping in and, giving really, really tight instruction on how to do something with a lot of leeway to just figure it out on their own. So it works really well in the Island Press context.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really funny. Feedback Loop is Lisa's baby. That's a class that Lisa designed, and I got to teach it for the first time this year. And I had this group of senior, mostly painters in there, and some of them had a fair amount of print experience, but most of them had very little. And there was something so freeing that was happening in the shop with them, knowing that part of it is failure and learning from failure, and that mistakes are part of it, where it just seemed like they were able to relax and just make. And I really tried to build the structure of the class around a lot of studio time, so we could spend that time together, making mistakes and letting it all happen. But I think that needs to be a class that's taught like when students arrive. So let's all go make mistakes together and learn something in the process. And you probably don't realize how much you've learned till it's over.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds like just such good medicine for the rest of their art making lives could be picked up in a class like that.
Definitely.
Yeah. I'd love it if we could hear a little bit about the history of Island Press. Lisa said you'd been involved with it since coming to the university, but when did it start? Who started it? What was the context? What was the original mission? All of that kind of thing. I'm really curious to hear more.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I have the perfect details on how it all kind of developed, but it was back in the 1970s. Peter Marcus, who was the chair of printmaking at the time, wanted to start a collaborative press and brought the printer Dan Gualdoni on board he was at Gemini, Tom?
Yeah, he was a Gemini.
And they worked together, I believe, to write a grant and got a grant from the Ford Foundation to start the shop in 1978. It was called the Washington University Collaborative Print Shop at the time. And they operated on really minimal funding. I think, just some departmental funding, because the Island Press has always been situated within the printmaking program, not as a separate entity, not, like even geographically, like it physically is within the printmaking area of the College of Art. And so they would bring in, they didn't have a real regular program, but brought in some really great people from that point on, the 70s to the early 2000s when I got more involved. It became Island Press, the name, in 1999. Peter Marcus retired at that time, and Joan Hall took over the directorship of the press. And it was named Island Press. Well, there's a couple of reasons. One, the press itself. We have this very large press that was designed by a machinist in collaboration with Peter Marcus here in St. Louis, and it's called the Island Press.
Okay.
It's got a 5 by 10 foot press bed.
Oh my gosh.
So its footprint is, like 24 feet long. And also there's sort of more metaphorical idea of St. Louis and the program here being a kind of island of creativity, in a flyover state. Yeah. So Island Press was named and kind of graduated into a different phase in the late 90s when Joan was director, and she did a lot of paper making. So if you look at work from that period or in the history of Island Press, you'll see a lot of paper making. And Marianne Simmons was the printer at that time, and she's since left. I guess it was 2003, Tom, when you took over. She started Wildwood Press, and Tom became the printer at Island Press. And then Joan Hall retired in 2009. In 2010, the press received a small donation from a local print collector, and we were able to establish an endowment that now helps fund our visiting artist program. That's Dr. Arthur Prensky that endowed the press. So we're really fortunate to have that.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really, Dr. Prensky's gift was really a game changer. I think that our mission has always been we've always tried to get bringing interesting, great artists, but the ability to just go out and ask who you're really interested in and who you really want to bring in just changed everything. And to be able to have the funds to really be a research press. I think that we do have to be concerned with sales and things like that, but maybe less so than other places, because I really think Lisa and I's minds are both on just like pushing the research and making the project more important than the product.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. And I also come from an institution with an endowment, and I can reflect on that just that little bed of security in the art world that's unusual to find, and the chances you can take with that and how that's so important. So definitely lots of love to those who think about art institutions and creating lasting legacies for them in there.
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
financial and estate planning.
Yeah, we really owe a lot to Dr. Prensky for doing that. It
Yeah.
really changed everything for us.
I'd love to hear you talk more about how you define research in that way. Because I love that you were saying that you can forefront the research. And just how does that actually show up in the collaborations, how you take things on and maybe even an example or two of a project where you really felt like, oh, okay, Island Press really ended up doing something quite different in this way through having this freedom and having the ability to go where the project needs to go with that safety net. Can you think of a project that you've done recently or that you've both worked on that really had the chance to center reading?
Oh, yeah. Well, there's so many, but the one that really jumps to mind is the project that we did with Dario Robledo called The First Time in the Heart. And that's a portfolio of 50 prints that we really kind of invented a special process for. Dario had done years of research on the early imaging and history of recording the human heartbeat.
Mm.
Um, from early scientists' work in Germany, where they strapped a device on the wrist of a person to record their pulse, where they, using a stylus and a piece of paper or glass covered with soot, the the pulse would kind of drag the stylus through the soot and create what we now recognize as the kind of EKG line. And so he had found hundreds of these recordings that scientists and doctors had done where patients were in different states while they were being recorded, like eating chocolate or being threatened with going to the dentist or after exercise. And they had made these notes. So he really wanted to do something in the print shop with this research that he had done. And so it fell on us to kind of, with the students, to figure out how to translate these ideas. And we ended up doing a really interesting thing with the materials that were part of the original recordings, the soot. And I'll let Tom talk about that in a second, but just to say that the research that Dario did continued in a different way in the print shop, where it was in like this super kind of collaborative and creative, and we really had to think on our feet to figure out how to do technically what made the most sense and was the most poignant. But also we had to engage in a kind of philosophical research, I think I would call it
Mm.
that, or maybe spiritual. When he was in the shop with us, like each day we would start the day honoring the heartbeat or the people whose heartbeats we were rendering. So it was just a very holistic kind of experience with him. But I'll let Tom talk a little bit about the process.
Yes, the process was just one of those really wonderful printmaking alchemical experiences. Like Lisa and Dario and I were futzing around with a lot of different things that day. We had students making drawings with a little stylus with a hair in it, drawing in soot to see if we could get something that looked like if you followed someone's pulse and drew it, would that get the kind of mark we wanted? And kind of all at once, Lisa and I figured out that if we took and printed it with just with transparent base, printed that pulse wave, and then applied soot to it, and then fused the soot somehow. And we ended up using shellac and denatured alcohol to fuse the soot to the paper. It wouldn't do it where the ink was. So you could go back afterwards and remove it. And what we ended up with were these really like beautiful ethereal images, like the pulse wave running through this cloud. So they felt like they had time to them. They felt like they had space to them. And all the materials lined up. Like the soot was a really big component. Getting that white line, that really delicate white line, we were able to get that using lithography and printing that transparently. So it was just this great moment. I remember dipping it, and then I grabbed it and went over to this table, and I was like, I think this might work. And we started brushing at it a little bit, and I showed it to Lisa, and I just saw her eyes light up, and then we showed it to Dario, and it was like, okay, we have something here. And It was a little rough at first, but the more we did it and the more we finessed it, like anything, like the deeper you get into the printing, the better it gets. We were really able to finesse and get these really complicated, gorgeous images out of it.
Yeah, and the cool thing too, I think, was like that. I feel like my early history with lithography was like key to sort of understanding that the line would lift. It was like
Yeah,
actually doing lithography on a piece of paper. Kind of almost like buffing in the asphaltum and then lifting it out. So, or lifting the
Yeah.
gum. Anyway, that was a thoroughly like research and education focused residency. We went to the medical school library. The students really got to learn so much about, the research that Dario was doing, and then also how to make it, translate it into print. So
yeah,
Yeah.
and it felt like it just kept on getting. The more we talked to Dario, and the more we got excited about it, it just kept on growing and growing. And finally, we were like, okay, it has to be 50. Cap it there. We can't make it any larger. But the trajectory of it, it starts with the first pulse wave from an umbilical cord
Oh,
and
wow.
ends with a flat line, someone dying. So it's just weaves this really beautiful and interesting life in between there. Yeah, and like what Lisa said before, we would start each morning with Dario just like honoring the people that were part of these experiments early on and part of this examination of the heart. He's a really charismatic person. I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to be around him or work with him at all, but man, he can really get you excited and into something. And yeah, we spent a long time on it, but it never felt like it wasn't worth it. It got better and better the deeper we got into it.
That sounds like a really beautiful project. And this was all over the course of 1 week?
Oh my gosh.
Okay,
No.
because sorry, I was curious because earlier you had said they come for a week, and I was like, oh my, like what
well,
is your superpower? Yeah.
we did figure it out. Like the
Technique.
the goal every time is within that week to come up with the BAT, or at least
Right.
know where the project is going. We do the additioning after the artist leaves, and sometimes they come back, which Dario did come back twice because he
Mm.
wanted to have a hand in the actual, like we used tapers to like and turned the prints upside down and smoked them individually. So he wanted to have a hand in all of the process through the addition. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that sounds so beautiful. It reminds me a little bit of the Golden Record, the Voyager project that Carl Sagan and Ann Duran did, and how it has it has Anne's heartbeat on it when she's falling in love with Carl.
that's the whole reason he did the project.
Really?
That's yeah.
Oh.
He's friends with Andrian, and yeah, that's it
Oh. Oh my
right
gosh.
there.
So no wonder I was like that. I feel like I have another really romantic heartbeat story in my mind. Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. Oh, I'm definitely going to have to dive deep into that. That's one of my favorite facts about the universe is that there's a heartbeat on a couple of golden records shooting out
Yeah,
into the
heartbeats that
void.
we're in love. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Human love, just like out there. That's so
yeah.
lovely.
Still going.
Still going. Yeah, we lost contact with one a little bit, but it's back. I'd love for you to talk about how the project at Island Press in general, interacts with the students, because you've mentioned a little bit that, like they got to see Dario's work. Is it a class? Is it a printer training program? What's the actual interaction between print students and Island Press?
We bring an artist in for a week-long residency. Okay, and during that residency, all the classes are turned over from being classes to the students become assistants for that week. Back in the day when we were a more siloed school, the printmaking area, we had our students in the area and we would just all day long be at Island Press. But now we have classes that happen at different times of day, so we have shifts of students coming through. So students in my class all become assistants, and students in Lisa's class that they're teaching become assistants for the time that they're there for class. And it really is, they're involved in every facet of it, from helping us brainstorm what's going on, like what processes we might be able to pursue, to just being total worker bees and helping us, what is it? The many hands make light work.
We also open it up to anyone that wants to help. We have a sign up sheet that people can just sign up whether they have experience or not. And they sign up for a shift. And anybody who works 2 shifts, which are 3 hours each, gets what we call a helper print.
Oh,
So the
nice.
artist makes a small print that everyone who helps on the project gets, which is a lovely part of this. And then there are other opportunities like through summer internships or internships during the year that students can learn and do more of that kind of training.
Mm-hmm.
Although I would say that all of it is good training. So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they get us see the whole process, and we bring in such a wide variety of people that they really get to see that there's not one fixed way to be an artist. That everybody has a different way that they pursue ideas and figure things out.
Yeah. And in terms of the actual conversations that happen around the collaboration, when does that take place? Are you of the mind that you do a lot of front end work where there's a lot of conversations or even maybe a studio visit or something before they show up? Or does it happen the day they're there? Does it depend on the artist?
we have usually a conversation a month or 2 out from when the residency happens, but we really try to be pretty fresh, when they arrive and not have any set expectations, and really use the first couple of days. It can make for a kind of a stressful week, but first couple of days to just play and try a variety of things. But like we just were contacted by an artist who's coming in the fall who wants to, have a conversation now because she wants to, know what she needs to do, and other people want to just land and hit the ground running. So it varies, but yeah, we have a minimal conversation.
I think that Lisa and I work best with the least amount of planning that way. I think we both have a really good and I'm sorry, I don't want to speak for you, and you can correct me if you think differently, but I think that in the first couple of days you figure out what someone's after, and I think we're both really good about figuring out what that is and pursuing it rather than coming in with something that's really planned. It's also just really exciting, again, get thrown into the deep end with someone to figure things out.
And for the artist, I mean, like, until you see a 5 by 10 foot press or a 4 by 8 foot etching bath, you don't really get it. Like, oh, I could really work that big. Not that everybody does that, and actually, for the most part, they don't. But they have that choice, And so I think seeing and seeing the material, seeing some examples of how things can look,
Mm-hmm.
that really can't happen so much ahead of time. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And are there like other, sorry, I just I'm stumbling over this because I just had this brainwave of realizing that Dario works with Jennifer Roberts, who just published.
We're big fans.
Do you have the book?
Yeah.
Oh, you have.
And I saw it out of the corner of my eye, and then I just that kind of galaxy brain, like all the lines on the board connected. And I was like, oh, that's why I know that name. And that's why the connection to space. And okay, I can focus now on this. But I had just they
have a new film coming out that they co-scripted. Yeah.
Really? Wow.
And it's about what was left off of the Voyager record.
That's really cool.
Check out Jennifer's Instagram post from a couple days ago.
Yeah, I will definitely look at that. Jennifer is amazing. Just constantly just doing such cool things for the expanded print world. So Oh, very nice. But so I was curious. So the people you bring in, how often do they have a significant print background, or how often are you getting someone just super fresh and you have to guide them gently by the hand in a very short period of time into the possibilities of what print can do and what a studio like you have can do?
Most of the people that we bring in have had minimal experience with printmaking, and we've only worked with one person who identifies as a printmaker in the last 15 years or so. That's Diane Victor, who's an amazing printmaker from South Africa. But we also, we've worked with people like James Sienna, who's done over 100 print editions, although he's a painter.
Mm-hmm.
But we're interested in the ways that other kinds of work can manifest through print media. So yeah, we don't think about that too much. We don't expect any
Mm-hmm.
experience in advance.
Yeah. Yeah, I think maybe more often than not, we tend to lean into people who maybe have less experience just because we're excited about helping them, guiding them into this new, wonderful way of reimagining their work.
And
Yeah.
we typically, are inviting them because we see something in their work that we think would have some resonance in
Mm.
some media that's, print based or multiple based. So yeah, that's probably a little bit of ulterior motive, or, just sort of background thinking, oh, this work would really translate well. Let's see what we can
Totally.
do.
And I
Yeah.
think that there is. Oh, go ahead, Tom.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
As I was just like, I think there is something so much in through the fresh set of eyes. So if you're looking at pushing what print is, if you're looking at really doing this research and how it interacts with finished product, having someone who doesn't already have the boundaries drawn in their mind could really be a benefit. And I'm thinking very famously John Cage's fire prints at Crown Point Press and how it apparently
Yeah.
it came about by just saying, "Can you put fire through a press?" And they were like, "I guess we're going to find out."
And that's a really good way to put it. We'll find out. I think that we find ourselves in that position all the time.
Mm.
Yeah, and that goes hand in hand with the sort of research and education focus of the Island Press. When I can't reach out to an artist to ask them if they want to come do a project with us, they know that we're just on board for trying stuff. Like, there's no pressure to produce something that's commercially, viable, or that's certainly not the focus of what we're trying to do. So I think that's really appealing.
Yeah.
Well, I think a little bit of our student body makeup at the time too does help us influence us a little bit. In the past we've reached out and asked for suggestions from graduate students and undergraduate students for artists that they might be interested in working with. But I think in the back of our head, that's something that's always there to me, whether it's specifically asked of them or not. But I think that those choices are, at least when I'm thinking of people, I try to think who would be great for this group to work with right now.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for anyone who's going to hear this and maybe they're thinking about going in the collaborative printmaking realm? We have a lot of students who listen to the podcast from all over the world. And if you want to go be a printer for the rest of your life, collaborative printmaking is one of the few ways you can truly do that in a sustainable way. So it is a really appealing path, I think, for a lot of younger printmakers. What about if they're listening and you want to say, okay, if I was 20 years old and I was just starting on, this is what I wish I'd known?
I've never really thought about it. It's just always felt very natural. I think that I use it, at least for me, it's a catalyst for me. I get energized when I'm working with someone. It energizes what I'm doing in my own studio. And I've really come to enjoy that energy. And again, just to say, I love the collaborative community. I think that I thrive in that environment. And so if you don't like that, then it might be a difficult choice. But if you do like that and it's something that resonates with you, then I would say, yeah, do what feeds you. I've never, ever come in here thinking I don't want to be here.
Yeah,
So.
it's a gift. Yeah.
Wow, Tom, that's awesome. I'm glad you can say that. I think, printmaking is this weird paradox of, we call it the democratic medium, and yet it's pretty hard to access if you're not in school, or you're don't have a community print shop that's affordable and local. So your point about the collaborative printing being one of the ways that you can sustain yourself as an artist printmaker is a really, really good one. And I think it can happen in a really DIY way. And I know we've got people here in St. Louis doing it, just in their own garage, or like, in small ways, and then that you can build it up from there. If it is something that you want to have passion for, and I would say it's as creative as having your own, private practice, right? And it's like Tom says, so community focused and allows you to really work with other people and feel like you're producing something that's meaningful together.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Can you let people know where they can find Island Press online, where they can see the projects, where they can follow what you're doing, maybe look at getting involved in some way if they're a student thinking about kind of the future and what they might want to do if they're interested in printmaking?
Yeah, so you can find us online through the Sam Fox School at Washington University in St. Louis. We have a separate Island Press website that you can navigate to. That I can't recall the URL right now because it's a little bit long. But we are also on Instagram, and so you can follow us there. You can get involved with Island Press through our summer internship program, which we have application cycle that happens in the fall and winter. And we have an emerging artists fellowship that we run every 2 or 3 years, that we also put out a call for applications on Instagram and on the website.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, for students, the internship is really great. We've had students come from as far away as Canada and New York to participate, but from all over the U.S. It's a month of just printing and making work. And usually, like Lisa had mentioned, we have an Emerging Artist Fellowship, and a lot of times that internship and the Emerging Artist Fellowship will cross over. So there's time to collaborate with an artist as well.
Very cool. I will put links to all of that in the show notes, and I will find the Island Press website and I will pop it in there. And yeah, I just want to thank you both again for a lovely and really exciting chat about what you all do. And I'm looking forward to staying in touch and following your good work in the print world for a long time. So thank you again.
Awesome.
Thanks so much, Miranda. Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting us, Miranda. This was really an honor.
If you like today's episode, we have a Patreon where you can help support our podcast and get bonus content like Shop Talk Shorts with past guests. But the very best thing you can do to support this podcast is listen, rate, follow, and share with your fellow print friends around the world. This episode, like all episodes, was written and produced by me, Miranda Metcalf, with editing by Timothy Pauschak and music by Joshua Weber. I'll see you in 2 weeks.